All right. Let's see. Okay, so I have three people watching from, I'm assuming from Twitch. And I hope you guys can hear me clearly. So let's communicate in the chats. Okay. All right. Hello. So this is more like it's more like a revision, right? It's more like a revision. We're going to talk about Tailwind, and we are basically going to look at it from a very beginner-friendly standpoint. Okay. So if you have any question, while I'm explaining, please drop the question in the chat so that I would answer your question. I want to make sure everybody understands what we're learning today, right? If you have any question at any point in time, just drop a message immediately. All right. So I would attend to that. Okay. So yeah. So I think everyone can see my screen. I'm sure of that. What I have right now is I'm currently on the Tailwind official homepage, right? That is what you're seeing here, the Tailwind official homepage. And I am going to be using the documentation from here, right? So I'm simply going to click on Docs. But before I do that, I want you to understand one basic thing, right? I mean, let's just take a look at this. So you can build a modern website, amazing, beautiful websites with Tailwind, which happens to be a CSS framework, and it's a utility, framework, right? So right here we have it's a utility first CSS framework packed with classes like Flex, PT4. PT4 is more like a padding top, right? 4. Then we have Text Center, which we would use to center align your text. Of course, obviously, Text Center. Then we have rotate 90, just you use that to rotate, your items. And you can actually compose most of these classes together to give you a complete, implementation of your design. All right. So in order to get started, you can click on this, get started. When you get started here, it's basically going to take you to the documentation, right? But this time around, it will take you to the installation, to the installation using Tailwind CLI. So as you can see, you can set up Tailwind using the Tailwind CLI. You can also set up Tailwind using Post CSS or using the CDN. We're going to use the CDN today. I love explaining with the CDN because then it gives you an easier way to understand, how this work. But of course, we're going to follow the documentation you see here. We're going to focus on most of the utilities, the utility classes. When you come down to layout, columns, I'm not going to explain every single one of them. I'm just going to show you how to use it, and you can then explore, right? Um, it's quite easy once you understand the fundamentals as regards how to set up a new project, a new HTML project, add the CDN to your project, and try a couple of utility classes, right? Because that is what you're going to be doing most of the time, using these utility classes. If you understand the pattern on how these classes are composed, it will be easier for you to work with these classes. You don't have to cram them because I mean we have a lot of them. You cannot cram everything, and we don't advise people to memorize. When I say cram, I'm basically referring to memorize, right? You don't want to memorize every single thing here. We don't advise people to follow the pattern of memorization. We don't do that. It's better you understand the pattern, you know how it works, so that when you start using them, it will be easier for you, to work with Tailwind going forward. All right. Okay. So someone just dropped the link to the docs. Thank you very much. I'm this. So you can actually follow that link. We're going to use the CDN. All you have to do is click on this tab right here, place CDN, and we're going to copy this base class, this base file. So I'm going to create a file. Basically, I would, and I keep finding it, surprising that I cannot share, I cannot present, multiple screens. So I would have to, please give me a minute. I would have to present the entire screen. Okay, all right. So I'm presenting the entire screen on my MacBook. So I'm sure you can see this. What I'm going to do right now is I am going to create a new HTML file. I'll be using Sublime Text, but of course you can use VS Code. So I'm creating that file from the terminal. I just have to go to my desktop, this is just me creating a new folder and a new file, right? So I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call this Tailwind CSS. All right. So right now I'm inside Tailwind CSS folder. I'm going to create a file, which is index.html. Okay. So let's open up that file in Sublime Text. And I'm going to paste the code I just copied from the website. So I'm going to explain this again. So of course, I mean, you understand the basics, right? So this is just your regular HTML, code block. We have the HTML tag, we have the head tag. Within the head tag, we have these meta tags, specifying our viewport. But the most important thing here is the script, because the script, refers to I mean, this is calling the Tailwind, scripts from the Tailwind website. So if I go ahead to paste this here on my browser, so just to show you what you would get, you see we have a bunch of JavaScript, kind of like a minified JavaScript file, that has the CSS inclusive in here. So what you're seeing here is just a compact a Tailwind um, file, right? So it's a combination of the entire Tailwind, at least the version you can use to try this out. Okay, so that is what you're seeing here on the custom CDN link provided by Tailwind CSS. Now you can get this as you can actually use the CDN link offered by other platforms like Cloudflare. They've actually stored some of these Tailwind CSS versions on their own CDN. So if you get any other link, maybe from Cloudflare or from UNKPG, yeah, you can actually use them. But for now, we're going to use the default option provided by Tailwind. Okay, so that is a lot of talking. I hope you understand what I just explained here. So right now, you see we have a very simple example. This is going to describe this is going to make the heading. We're saying we want text 3XL, which is this is the text, of course, and is describing the text size, right? So 3XL is saying extra large, times 3 basically, right? So it's going to be like a large text. Then we're going to make this bold, and it's also going to be underlined. All right. So let's figure out if that is going to work. So in my Sublime text file, I'm simply going to save, right? I basically copied what we have here into the file, right? And I'm going to open this file in our browser. So let's do that. All right, so you see we have the item here underlined, as you can see, right? And the text is also big and bold. Okay, so before going back to the website, the Tailwind documentation website, let's just assume I change this to XL, without the 3. Now you see what we have, right? It became smaller. What if I use like 8XL? What is going to happen? Can we even do that? Yes, of course we can. So as you can see, it increased again. So you can basically, adjust, the values. These are the utilities we're referring to, right? So this is a utility, and of course, it can be customized. So we have font bold, we have, underlined. If you take off the underline class, this is going to take off the underlining, attributes from there as well. Okay, so what exactly can we do? Can we add some padding, to the top, maybe like PT5? This now you might be saying, okay, you know this thing because you're just you have been using it. From my previous class, I told the guys there that I've not used Tailwind in a very long time. Maybe I might have used this in a class, right? Just like this, to teach people how to use this framework. But I've never I've not used Tailwind in a project for a very long time. Probably up to maybe more, I'm sure more than 4 years. I'm guessing. Um, yeah, so actually I've not used it in a long time. I would have to verify because I can't even remember when this library was launched. Back in the days we were using Bootstrap. So it was very popular. Tailwind became very popular because you can simply customize everything using utility classes. But most times people don't like having their HTML file filled up with classes everywhere, right? But yeah, I mean, if you're working on a project and your company uses Tailwind, I don't think it's a big deal. If you're comfortable having utility classes, then that's fine. So if I save this, this is going to this basically means padding top 5, right? padding top 5. Yeah, so the CDN can be used for quick projects. So someone is saying, which is the best to use, CDN or the CLI? So the CDN can be used for quick projects, personal website portfolios and stuff like that. If you're building a large project, or like an application, like a full-blown application, I would recommend you work with the CLI, because then you're going to be working with a framework, I assume, a JavaScript framework. So it's most often better you work with the CLI. You basically install npm inside your project. Yeah. So someone said, I think that was the mystical coder. When you're working on large projects, and yeah, that's a good idea. Very correct. Okay, so if I save this, let's see what happens. So you see, we actually added the padding just to be sure that we're at 100%. I'm going to increase this to padding of 30. That's padding top specifically, right? So we don't have a value from there. What if I say padding top of 9? Okay, so we have padding top of 9. What if I just say padding of 9 and I take off the padding top attribute there. So of course, you see we have the padding all around this object. Yeah, so around the H1 element. If I inspect my element right here, and we check it out, you see if I select this item and we check it out here, you see we basically have this padding P9, which is a padding of 2.25 ROEM, right? It's obvious from here that that padding was applied. And likewise, we can also use margin. If that is what you want to use, you can use margin, you can use padding. Yeah, and you can specify if you want margin top or margin bottom. Let's take that off for now. I'm going to work with a different example from here. So I usually work with an example of a card. Let's see if I can find that from here. Let's see responsive design. I think I'm going too far already. So let me come back to okay, so I was actually hoping I would get to see the example. Oh yeah, so yeah, it is. So utility first fundamentals. Okay, so I'm going to work with this example. In my previous session, I also used this example to teach you guys. So this is more like the regular pattern where you have to implement a custom class to basically represent your your style. But Tailwind, when you're working with Tailwind, you won't do this, right? Instead, you have to just use the utilities. So I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to paste this in here, just inside the body. Okay, so let me expand on this. Right. So if you take a good look at this, of course, we are starting from here down to this point. All right. So yeah. Okay, so if you take a good look at this, you discover one thing. In the base div, you see you have like the padding of 6. You have we have a lot of attributes, right? We have a lot of attributes like the background here. Of course, this is BG white, rounded XL. Rounded XL is going to describe the border radius, right? The border radius, that's curve. So this is saying it should be extra large, which means of course you can reduce this to large. You can reduce, you can make, you can probably use SM, right, which is small. You can use MD, which is medium. You can use XL, which is extra large. Then this is going to add the shadow. The shadow is LG, which is large, right? So you can use extra large. Yeah. So let's stick to LG for now. I would explain the flex. I believe you know what the flex is, but even if you don't know what flex is, I will show you. So I just want to refresh the page we have on our browser. So you see what we have. I mean, we don't have the picture, so let me zoom in for now. The picture is not shown here because we did not bring in the picture, but that's fine. We can basically copy a picture online. So I can simply go to my hopefully if that works. Let's see. I can go to my website and I can just grab the picture I have there. Okay, so yeah, let's copy image address. All right, so I'm going to basically go back to our code. Let's do that. So back to Sublime Text, and I'm going to paste in the URL right here. Okay, so let's see if that works. If I refresh the page. Okay, so we have the picture showing up here. All right, so good. If I go back to our code, let's try to describe a couple of things here. So for the picture, you see we have image class, we have the height, we have the width, right? So the H12 and the W12 is representing the height and the width, right? Which means I can, adjust the size if I want to. And of course, I can even add, more properties like you can, of course, add the rounded option, which is XL again, right? So if I test this to see what we have, you see we have that XL, okay? So that is for the border radius. All right, so let's go back to our code. And yeah, we can basically use some of this is one of the classes you're seeing here, text XL, which is large, which means if I go back to the browser, we have text XL right here for the chit chat, right? We're using font medium, we're using text black, which is the color, right? And at the bottom here, we're using text slate 500. This is basically the color, right? It can be red, right? If I use red and I refresh, this is going to change, right? So you'll see that right here to red. Okay, so if I use blue, now when it comes to colors, you follow your documentation, of course, but you should understand that what you're seeing here is basically going to set kind of like the opacity of that specific color. So if I use 900, text blue 900, let's see what we have. So you see we have like a very deep blue, right? If I use text blue 100, or maybe 200, 300, so you can see that at least, because 100 might be too faint. It's going to drop, it's going to drop that specific color, probably to a different, lighter shade. I think that's the best term to use, like a lighter shade, not necessarily the opacity, but the shade. So if I use 100, it's going to be very, very light, right? As you can see, it's going to be very light. So that is what you do with the color. So let's stick to 500. 500 is more like a medium, blue color, just like this, right? So as regards the flex, right? I was telling you about the flex. The flex item you're seeing here is basically, aligning the image and the text. So this is a div. The div contains, this div contains the chit chat and the item. You have a new message, and we have a different item here. So the flex is actually making it sit side by side, right? Meaning, if I take this particular image, which is the entire div basically, and I put this after the text, you're also going to see that, on the other side, right? It's simply going to appear on this side, okay? So because we have a flex, right? If I take off this flex, it's going to be stacked on top of, each other, right? So you're going to see it stacked on top of each other. Now it's actually taking some time to load because it's always fetching that CSS, the Tailwind CDN, file on every single refresh. But yeah, you get the point, right? So I took off flex, and you have this item stacked on top of the other items. So if I put back the flex, so this is basically CSS flex, and it's just wrapping the items in a straight line. It's possible to also customize this, but the idea is understanding the code you are seeing. I think that's the most important thing. And I've said this several times. When you understand what you're seeing, for example, somebody asks you, okay, so what exactly is shadow FG? You don't know this before, right? But when you say, okay, LG means large, right? I mean, looking at the prefix, you're looking at the fact that we're trying to understand, the patterns. LG here means large. It means that, the shadow is actually large. So what if I change this to ND? What happens? Obviously, the shadow is going to be reduced, right? Just take a look at that. The shadow was reduced. If I change it to SM, and I refresh again, it's going to be reduced again, right? So take a look at that. It has been reduced again. You get the point. So we're just understanding the patterns and working with the patterns. Okay. Yeah. So let's see. Sometimes, so I think probably because I'm using Sublime, I'm not really getting a lot of code completion. If I'm using VS Code, I am very sure I would get even more completion, right? So let's see, rounded Excel. Yeah, so it's just giving me some of the completions. It's giving me the completions based on what I have on the file. If you use VS Code, right, like in the previous class, if you remember, you get to see a lot of completions. I'm sure most of you were in that class, right? You get to see a lot of completions. So please, of course, I would always recommend you use VS Code. Sublime is just way faster. I have a lot of things running on my machine right now, so I just wanted this to be a quick one. Yeah. So let's go back to the documentation website. Okay, so I'm going to pick another example. I'm sure we have another example somewhere around here. Just to show you. Yeah, so this is another example. Now, before I, explain, this would be the last example I'll be, using to explain a couple of things from here. Then we'll dive into, talking about some of the things you can use Tailwind for, right? Basically everything, styling, but just to give you more context. So if you have any questions so far, drop it in the chat while I paste in this example inside our text editor, right? Or code editor. So good. So if you have any questions, someone is saying, can we get dark mode in Tailwind? Yeah, of course you can. You can get dark mode in Tailwind. So as you can see, you have the option for dark mode right here. So yes, you can. Can you see my browser very well? Do I have to expand this? Yeah. So yes, you can actually have Tailwind. You can set up, hover state. You can set up states, right? So hover, focus, and the other states. Just the same way the way you create those states using the normal, pure CSS, right? You can also use Tailwind to set up those states. You can even set up, responsiveness to say, okay, I want this to show up if I'm on kind of like if I'm on a mobile device, right? You actually have those properties. Okay, so we'll just check out the documentation shortly. So what I have here is I basically copied. I think I should first copy this URL because I'm going to need it. So let's copy this. All right, so I'm going to replace the image link with the link that I copied. Okay, so this is just a template or a sample from the website as well, and they're just using this to explain to the newbies, to show you how easy it is to use the framework. So if I go back to the code right now, you see first the base div here. We have the padding, of course, we have 8, so padding Y, right? So padding Y, and of course we also have the other option, which is padding X, right? So if I go back to our code, you see we have like MX Auto. MX Auto is more like saying the margin X Auto, which means I want everything to be properly aligned to the center. That is what you use the margin Auto for. So what I want to do right now is to take it off. Let's take it off. Okay, let's take it off. Let's change the background to black. But you know what? Let's keep that. Let's change the background to black. So I'm just trying to make some adjustments. Let's make this XL for the shadow. It should be way bigger. The space in between, right? The space in between. What I'm going to do is I'm going to first change the text to white because I already changed the background to black, right? This font is semi-bold, and this font is basically the name, right? So this name you're seeing right here, this is semi-bold. Then we have maybe I can drop this a little bit. So let's see, white. This should be white. Well, let's drop that white down to like 300, right? So product engineer. Okay, so let's refresh, to see what we have. It's more like changing the whole thing to kind of like a dark theme. So the text is not showing. The text we have here is not showing. The text white did not show. I'm going to save it and try it again. Okay, so we have the product engineer test right now. Then we have font medium. And then when it comes to the button, you see we have the PX4. So basically this is the padding, right? You've created your button, right? And you're putting the padding. So of course the padding is around the button. And I mean, if you don't understand what that is, I'm going to kick it off. Then you see, I'm just going to refresh. So take a look at the button. We're going to see the outcome, right? So you see the result. So you see, you no longer have that, that space, right? So that was the PX, right? So PX, as I said earlier, the space you have, on the left and right, right? And then when you use PY, is the space you have on the top and the bottom. Okay, so that's the padding, right? So this is PX. So we can even increase that, we can increase that to 9, 8. So I'm just going to stick to 4. We have the color of the button, right? And also the outline. So as you can see, you have the color of the text inside the button, that is text purple. You also have to say purple for the background, which is the border first, which is border purple, right? You see that the border is also, brighter. If you take a look at that border, you see it is brighter. So that's why you have 200 because it's brighter. Then, they say when we hover, so this is what I meant when I said states, right? So this is what I meant. Yeah. I mean, you can use, media query right inside, the right inside your HTML here. I mean, that was what I was trying to talk about the other time, you can actually do that. So when I say if you're on the mobile view, I want this particular item to display this way. You get my point? You actually have that option as well. Okay. Yeah. So, but this is the state, right? So you see, we have the hover state. Michael, I'm sure you can see this. So we have the hover state. You see, we have the hover border transparent, right? This happens to the border on hover state. We also have a focus state, right? So you see, you can actually use different states, within as utilities. So this is what I was explaining the other time. You see, now you have a bunch of utility classes just within the button. If you don't have any problem with this, it's fine, right? I don't have any problem with it. Yeah, so if you don't have any problem with this, with this is good. So if I save this now and I just refresh, yeah, so we just added that the padding X, right? We just added that padding X again. Okay, so looking at the div, I can basically add the margin, right? If you remember the margin, so margin, if I do margin 8, it's basically going to create that margin around around our div, right? So you're going to have that margin around our div. Just to put this space you see right here, you have that equal size here, here and also right here. Okay, so now, as regards answering some of the questions I'm seeing there, let's first check out the hover and the states. So when I click on that, it's basically going to load the documentation. So you see we have some of the hover option here. By default, you have the background of BG Sky 500, and we say when we hover, change this to BG Sky 700. So you see that is what you see right there. When we hover, so you see where we added the states, right? So yeah, and of course we have different states, of course, as you can see have different states, so you can definitely use those states. And I was also telling you the other time, when you mentioned you said, okay, do we have dark theme, right? So take a look at this. Yeah, this is basically you having dark theme, and if you're on a device, if you're on a screen size that is not extremely small. So there's an explanation for this here. Of course, you can stack this. For example, changing the background color in dark mode, right? At the medium breakpoint, is exactly what I was saying, right? So you can actually use this, when you're on dark mode, you can automatically switch things up. So you can have like a default color, on light mode like this, but whenever you switch to a dark mode, this is what happens. So on dark mode, and when you are on a medium, so the MD there represents, devices probably like a tablet, right? Maybe like 7-inch to 10-inch, devices. SM would represent like a mobile device, of course. So you see that when you're on dark mode, it's basically going to, and when you're on dark mode, the hover will be different, right? So you see you have a different background color, which is a BG fuchsia, if I'm pronouncing that well, BG fuchsia 600. Yeah, but it can be any color, right? So this is dark mode. This is a medium screen size. So please play around with that. Yeah. So in order to show you, I don't know if I can test this, with this property on the website, because we basically have light mode and dark mode. So if I change this to light mode, on the documentation, just trying to see. Yeah, so this was not really implemented on on this specific style, right? Okay, so it wasn't implemented on that specific style. So let me switch back. So I prefer working with the dark mode. Okay. So yeah, so of course you see you can also do some kind of styling, styling like this. You see how easy it is to set up this kind of styling. Um, Yeah, but I also want to show you, responsive design, which is basically the media query you made mention of. So you see, when you have SM, you see this is the minimum width. So when you do like media query, min width, this is what you're getting, right? So minimum width of 640, you use SM, 768, you use MD, 1024px, you use LG, 1280 XL. And if you have anything, everything above 1280, of course, you will use a XL, your 2XL, you can also extend that 3XL and just, like that. So this is an example, of an item that uses, let's see if we can adjust this. So as you can see, there's a media query for that. So as you adjust, things change, things are changing, right? Yeah, and yeah, we're seeing that because if you take a look at this, you see we have, when things change, MD, we have like a different size, right? Max width, so max W means max width, all right? So max width 2XL, so yeah, so for the text, you see we have uppercase, we have tracking width. So let's see what happens here. Yeah, so let's see. We have so I think the tracking wide is kind of like a media query. It's kind of like a media query item that is actually making this, is making text to be equal to the width, right? So that is my assumption here. But of course, you can actually read through or even search to see the exact meaning to that. But I'm sure we have text SM, which is small. If you change this up to text MD, the text will be much bigger. And of course, the color as well, text indigo, which is the color you see right here. So for the yeah. So I mean, just a lot of utility options to describe what you're seeing here. All right, and of course, we can just copy and paste this in our code right now. We already have the CDN, and this would work. This would work, straight, out of the box. You just have to import the image as well, right? Well, we don't need to do that. You've seen two examples already. Yeah, but if you're working mobile first, there's also a strategy to use. So what you use here, as you can see, is you have the default items first, which is the text center, right? So yeah, so as you can see, they are saying don't use the SM option to target mobile device. So this will only center the text. Okay, this will center the text on mobile and left align the text on screens. Okay, okay. Yeah, so this will center. This will have like a text centered. If you have some text in here, it's going to be centered like on a bigger screen. But on a smaller device, then it's going to be moved to the yeah, to the left, right? So it's going to left align it on screens, yeah, like this. Okay, good. So it's going to be aligned to the left. Yeah, so you can actually target different, different breakpoints. So the breakpoint is referring to your media queries, right? So if you remember, just at the top, you have different, breakpoints. So please learn to work with those breakpoints, such as SM, for this, MD, LG, right, XL, and 2XL. So if you understand how to work with this, given some of these little examples, you're good to go. Okay, you're good to go. If you want me to paste this, I don't think we need to do that, but I believe you get the point. So you want something to look different on a specific screen, just go ahead and use the breakpoints, just like SM. So I can say a specific text on mobile should be, probably red. So let's see if I can try that with one of the examples we already have. So we have we have this text. So we have this text right here. Back to my browser and back to the screen. Um, yeah, so I want to say on mobile view, I want this text to be green, right, or to be red or yellow. I think yellow would work. So let's go to the code. All I have to do is to say SM. So I can simply call the text uh, probably yellow. I'm assuming we have yellow. So let's just test that as a inspect element and just take it up to mobile view, right? All right, so let's do that. As you can see, my machine is kind of slow, but let's refresh and let me also zoom in on the screen. Let's go 150%. Okay, so the color I'm using, I selected yellow, but I'm going to probably use a different color. Let's see what exactly the problem might be. So this is SM text, or probably I would have to install some of these items. I'm not very sure, but I'm going to test this with red because I tried red the other time, right? I tried red the other time, and I hope I'm not doing that wrongly. Let's see if that works. It probably doesn't. Um, aha, okay, so this is not working. And I want to know why this is not working. So I just want to verify if I have to, add this manually again. Let's see. Because if you're using if you're using the CLI, you will definitely have to install, some of this, right? You'd have to install them as, extra utilities. But I'm just going to verify, what the problem is from the documentation, all right? Probably I'm doing it wrongly, okay? So let's work with this example. We have MD, okay? So, all right. Okay, so I think that is exactly what I did. Text-wise, font semi-bold. Hmm. Yeah, so we have an example text M thing here. So this is on medium size. Okay. Uh, yeah, text white, text red. Just give me a minute to try to see what happens here. Okay, so I think the thing is the specific style, the specific color I'm trying to work with. Maybe I have to specify the exact red I'm referring to. I think that's the problem. So if I specify the red, just to try this out, let's say like 500, just text red 500. Yeah, that should work. Yeah, so we have text red 500. Okay, so that's fine. So I bring back the text whites option, and I say text red 500 on the mobile view. Let's refresh this again. Okay, so that did not work. Oh, okay, yeah. Switch the whole thing up. Sorry about that. So switch the whole thing up. Yeah. So I mean, by default, based on what the other stuff we read, just a few minutes ago. So I'm supposed to use the text red option, and I say, okay, if you're on the other view, switch things up. So I think it's more like that's negating the whole thing. So let's see. Let's try this. What happens here? All right. So if I'm going to the mobile view, we're going to have the text red option. Yeah. So yeah, I think this is kind of like a common mistake that some people might make, because the way I thought about it, just from my explanation, is obviously kind of different from the way it's working right now, because it means that you basically would have to use the. I think I saw something like that. You have to use the medium. So for example, what we're seeing here, max W2XL, that is the large option right now. It means if I reduce this size, it's going to then adjust to the max WMD, right, which is medium, right? So in the full screen, right, in the max screen, it's going to give us the large option, and if I reduce this, then it's going to give us the MD. So it's kind of like it's kind of like the inverse, right? So please take your time to study this very well, and understand how it works. Um, so just take your time to study this. At least you just saw what happened from the example we just tried out. So take your time to study this. And as I said earlier, don't try to force yourself through learning every single thing here, in a rush. Take your time, learn how to implement the dark mode, learn how to work with the colors. So if you have noticed, I use text red without specifying this, the intensity of the color, basically, right? So when I set 500 or 600 or 100, then it works, right? If I don't set that for other colors, maybe apart from white and black, it didn't work. Okay, so we have those breakpoints. We also have, flex. Please, I think you should also understand how to use the, pure CSS. If you don't understand pure CSS, this might be difficult for you, because, you might be asking yourself, okay, what exactly is flex basis, flex direction, flex wrap? I'm not going to answer this, from the angle of Tailwind. I believe you should know this, and if we have not gotten there in the curriculum, take your time. We're definitely going to get there. We're going to learn how to use it. Okay. We're going to have different styling session. I'll be building and implementing some templates. So we usually have this session where we, as an assignment, bring in a lot of templates, simple cards like this, probably 7 or 10 of them as an assignment, and you are asked to implement all of them with pure CSS, right? And then you do that, you upload your code to GitHub, and then you share the link with us. But we would have to teach you how to use GitHub first before having an assignment like that. So, don't worry. We'll definitely have a session very soon. It's coming up very soon. It's a workshop actually to teach both the front end and the back end folks how to use GitHub and how to use Git. All right, so yeah, I don't want to explain some of these things. Like, if you have not created like grids, or you have not worked with Flex in pure CSS, then I don't expect you to know any of them, right? So you need to know them in CSS first, right? You know how they work. You know you know when to use Flex Wrap. If you have an item like this and you're using Flex Wrap, it means you're saying, if I have this item in a mobile screen, I want it to wrap automatically instead of overflowing. I want it to wrap automatically. If you have a grid, you should know how to use grid template rows, grid template columns, just like what you're seeing here. You should know how to set the grid auto columns. You should know how to set grid auto rows. You know how to use gaps, right? I mean, these are straightforward things when you know how to use them, in your pure CSS code, right? So learn to write CSS before learning to work with a framework. Okay. If you decide to also work with a Bootstrap, it's basically the same process, the same approach. You just need to understand how it works, right? Read through the documentation, understand the documentation, and try out some examples. Most of these frameworks have examples, just like the way we're exploring some of the examples here. Work with the examples. Learn through the examples, right? Before you try. Someone was saying he did not understand anything about the Tailwind. I mean, you have a documentation. I understand the class was bad. I think it was network problems. Even when I tried explaining this on Discord the other day, we also had network challenges. If you are able to learn from the documentation, understand the basics, understand the patterns. When you see LG, what does this mean? We're saying this is kind of like the large. What happens if you're switching up from different screen ratios of screen sizes, right? So that is basically what you're saying there. And you have height, right? You have width. Okay, you have object cover. So object cover is what you use on a specific image, so your image will not be stretched. I explained this the other day during the session, the clean CSS session. I saw someone, I think someone dropped a comment, saying why should I use this instead of using Tailwind, and I gave a feedback saying you shouldn't, right? I mean, if you're writing clean CSS the way you saw me structure it, it's for your own good. If you're working in a company where the company does not decide to use Tailwind, right? So you can work with a company. You can work with a company, and they tell you straight to your face, we're not using any framework here. We want to understand our stuff. We want to know our stuff. Our developers should understand our styling. We want to build our own custom. So, for example, the people building, we have like the custom Microsoft, design system. We have the custom Apple design system, Google design system. These guys are not using Tailwind, right? So if you're using Tailwind, it means you are, going to stick to Tailwind. Now, if you're building a project, long term, like a platform, if you're creating Flutterwave, for example, Paystack, you're not going to be, saying you want to be stuck with something. You want to have your own, your own system, so you can be flexible. But if you're building a short time, like a project for a client or something, I mean, go ahead with Tailwind, right? They all have their own, use cases. I mean, it excels in that kind of scenario. If you're building, a company project, for a long-term business, I think you might probably prefer to use a custom, the company's custom assets and custom styling, so that when they have new engineers, they won't implement Tailwind, the way they understand it. They basically have to follow, the standard design library on the ground. So learn to use Tailwind, learn when to use Tailwind, and probably when not to use it, right? And if you're asked not to use Tailwind, you should be able to use, pure CSS to create stuffs, right? So don't get stuck working with any CSS framework. Tailwind is cool. Tailwind is fun to use. It's interesting basically when you understand the patterns used when working with some of these items, right? Yeah, so I think that's what I have to say. So looking at typography, you can basically set your font size. Of course, we have been using text small, text medium, text large. You can basically set your font style, your font weight. it's like font, like text medium, text bold. Those are the weights, right? Text light. So you see when you click on them, when you click on any one here, for example, the font weight, it gives you the detail, right? So you see we have font thin, font extra light, normal, medium, semi bold, bold, extra bold, and black, right? And of course, you also see the arrangement here, from 100 to 900. Okay, so try to understand this pattern so that when you see them, you understand them. So please let me know in the chat if you have any question, if you're confused at any point, if there's something I said that you did not understand, or if you think I made a mistake, yeah, points it out so we can, correct that. Let me know in the chat. Okay, so we have just a few minutes to do that before we end this session. This is just, a revision, and I'm taking it from the point of working with the CDN. So you don't have to, I think the other day the confusion was, teaching you how to set this up with NPM, but you have not learned how to use NPM and Node, which, I totally understood when I saw the live video. We actually, informed the instructor that it was going to be, the students were actually beginners, but I think he forgot or something. But yeah, so the other material, if you're able to pick anything from the, class, it's really interesting because you will eventually get to do something like that in the future. So please watch it as well, okay? So someone said, I think I will focus on learn CSS before jumping into Tailwind. Yeah, yeah, you can actually, so Tailwind, Bootstrap, Balmer CSS, we have a lot of CSS libraries out there. Learn how to use CSS, understand CSS, use Tailwind on the side for now. When you have a project, jump into using Tailwind. You would actually enjoy it, right? And even if you're using it now for anything, it's fine. You're practicing, you are learning. So keep using it for probably cards. Go to a website like figmacomponents.com. Download a card. You don't have to design the card yourself. So if I go to figmacomponents.com, just download Figma or create an account. On your web browser. Figma. Create an account with Figma. So if you come to Figma components, there's so many components here. All you have to do is click on the components. It's going to copy the component automatically. Once you click, then go to Figma, just press Ctrl V. It pastes that exact component, so you don't have to design things from scratch. Okay. So when you paste that specific component, go ahead to implement that thing with Tailwind. Try, start from the top here. Implement every single item with Tailwind. It might take you a day. It might take you 2 days. It doesn't matter. Take your time, right? Spend enough time. When you're confused, do some research, okay? Or you can ask me, I'm always on the server. And even if I'm not on the server, drop a message. When I come online, I will respond, okay? So, have fun, download some of these components, play around with them, use Tailwind, use pure CSS. Just keep practicing. And, you would get used to these frameworks, right? I think the most important part is if you become comfortable writing CSS, I am very comfortable writing CSS, right? So if you can become comfortable writing CSS, I believe you would, love CSS. Yeah, I don't think you would ever find me using a framework, except I have to use it, maybe like a project that someone else was already working on, right? But, if I'm working on something, I just, go all in with, pure CSS. Sometimes I use SCSS, and, it's always fun, okay? It's always fun. So yeah, I think that's all. That's all I have to, I have for this session. So I don't think we have any questions. So my assumption is that you guys understand, what I've said so far, right? If you are still confused, you can reach me on Discord. Yeah. So thanks for joining. Have a wonderful day. Have a productive day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.